Is the design of the modern world making it more difficult, do you think, for us to find love?
So I think, well, simple answer is it's definitely added a layer of complication because now love is treated like shopping. You know, we shop for partners like we shop for shit on Amazon. You know, it's like you scroll through, you find one that looks good and you click like.
Good reviews.
And good reviews. Look, it's definitely convenient and it's definitely made life a lot easier. And you never have to deal with rejection because you don't know if they swiped left on you. You just assume that they never saw your picture, right? Like it doesn't actually say rejected, you know? I think the problem with it is it's grass is always greener because it's so easy, you know, to just go swiping. And, you know, sometimes you treat it like Instagram. You know, I've done this where I've sat in my bed late at night because instead of looking at social media, I'm looking at a dating app and I'm swiping right, like I'm clicking like on a post and then it says, you're connected. I'm like, damn it. Because I don't actually want to like go through the effort of like connecting. I was just liking the post, you know? Scott Galloway talks about this. I can't remember what the numbers are. But the point is there's a massive disparity of men that just don't ever connect. And there's nothing more dangerous in a modern society than a lonely man, right? And if you look at terrorism and if you look at mass homicide and things like that, it's very often a lonely man, you know? And you add in sex and incels and you know the Middle East, for example, you know, it's 25% during the height of terrorism, you know, a bunch of years ago, it was 25% unemployment in the region in a shame-based society where you have young men living at home and who aren't employed and they've never had sex because there's no sex before marriage. And how are you ever going to meet a girl when you live at home and you don't have a job? And then all of a sudden that stress comes out somewhere. And I think we don't talk about sex and sexuality as a part of our other behaviors. I mean, I for some reason, because we think it's bad to connect, you know, sex life with how people show up in the world. But you take somebody who's sexually frustrated, a sexually frustrated man in their mid to late 20s, and all of that pressure and insecurity and, you know, now desperation, like it comes out in horrible ways. And the need to exert control comes out in horrible ways. Different conversation. Scott Galloway, I said, you know, has some fantastic numbers on this. So I think, you know, the dating apps aren't necessarily fair. That's one thing, you know? It's not like everybody's going to find somebody. But I do think that there's something wrong with shopping for people. And the thing that I lament about dating apps that's really, and maybe this is just me, because I hate first dates.
Oh, God.
The worst. But the reason, you know,
why do you hate them?
Pre dating apps, or let's not pre-dating apps, it's just when there's no dating app being used, the way that we traditionally would meet somebody is you meet them at a party, at a dinner party, you meet them at the pub, you bump into them at a museum, you make small talk, or you eye them up from across the room and there's some attraction, and then one of you musters up the courage to go up and start flirting and have a conversation. And at some point you say, can I get your number? I'd love to continue this. And they'll say yes or no. And the flirting and the initial attraction has already happened. And so the first date is actually the first date after the initial attraction and flirting. Now with dating apps, the flirting, the initial attraction, the attempt to court someone is all happening simultaneously on the first date. There's a lot of pressure for a first meeting where, you know, when you meet somebody in IRL, it's like, you know, it's happened. The initial attraction has already happened. There's no expectation that they're not going to look like their picture. They're going to look like exactly what they're going to look like when you met them.
And it's dinner, so there could be 3 hours allocated. It could be expensive meal.
Whatever it is. I think there's nothing quote unquote wrong with online dating. I just think we like everything. Like there's nothing wrong with online shopping. But there's the reason that bricks and mortar stores still exist and that Amazon is opening stores. It's because people like to go shopping. It's a hunter-gatherer thing. Like there's entertainment in it. It's more than the purchase. It's more than the transaction. It's the browsing we enjoy. You know, it's in our DNA. you know, and I think that there's nothing wrong with online, but I think that making an effort to do, you know, in real life things should be included, should be balanced. You know, it's like everything in the world, I'm a great believer in balance. I don't usually rail for or against something. I'm usually talking about balances and imbalances. Even social media, so much has been said about, you know, what I've said about social media and millennials, et cetera. I'm not against it. I'm talking about balance, and it's out of balance. You know, even corporate culture, you know, I'm not against many of the modern things. I'm against the imbalance. You know, capitalism is unbalanced in its current form. So when we usually feel discomfort or anger or frustration, it's usually due to the imbalances. Isn't that where this conversation started? You know, that, you know, feelings of loneliness, something's out of balance, you know, and this is why I call it fitness rather than health, because fitness is the attempt to maintain equilibrium, to find balance. Sometimes it tips one way and sometimes it tips the other way. And you're constantly working to maintain balance. That's what all of this stuff is. Business is the same. You're an entrepreneur. It's feast or famine. Like, it's never the right amount, you know, and you're constantly working on balance. And I think that's the strongest argument for playing the long game, which is it's always teetering. That means you have to constantly be alert and constantly be working, because if it tips too far good, it's going to tip the other way. Don't rest on your laurels. Make sure you have got money in the bank. Like, stock markets just don't go straight up. It's not how it works, right? At the same time, when it goes the other way, it's like, don't worry, this too shall pass. This also won't last. Start working on some skills that you maybe haven't worked on. Start reaching out to people. Start apologizing. You know, if you've been so self-involved with yourself and now you're in a lonely place, sometimes being lonely, like, is calling up a friend and saying, I've been an asshole and I am sorry. And I'm in a really dark place right now. And I'm just looking back thinking, oh my God, I've been so self-involved that there's no one around me to be there for. And I am so, so sorry. You know, and again, it goes right back to everything we were talking about, which is it's accountable for me versus victim of me. You know, that I'm not a victim of the world around me. You know,
what impact has that had on your self-esteem? The realization, the awareness that you are feeling lonely. Has it had any impact on your self-esteem at all? Does it? Especially some of those, confronting some of those tough truths from the past.
It's a good question. You know, again, I'll go back to what I said before, which is we can have multiple feelings at the same time, even if those feelings are opposite. So I can be insecure and confident at the same time, right? Because so much of it is situational, right? I'm not insecure every moment of every day. Of course not. Nobody is. But I'm not confident every moment of every day. Of course not. Nobody is. And if you're stuck in one of those things, then there's a problem. If you really are overly confident every moment of every day with no actual self-doubt in your mind, there's something wrong there. There's some neurodivergence going on there, right? We know this. We know that narcissists are actually filled with self-loathing. You know, for all their bluster and power, they hate themselves, right? We know this. And again, I think it's all situational. I think it's all, and so, and I've talked about this, which is I don't believe in, you and I have talked about this, which is I don't believe in strengths and weaknesses or right or wrong. I believe everything is contextual. So, you know, people do these evaluations. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? No, what are your characteristics and what are your attributes? And then once you know those things, you have to know in what contexts those characteristics or attributes are advantages and in what contexts those attributes are disadvantages, and work very hard to put yourself in context where you're going to be working to your strengths. So if you have a natural capacity for maths, right, you're just really good. Like, people say out numbers and you just add them up in your head immediately and you don't have to pull out your fingers, right? You're just good at it, right? Put yourself in a situation where that's an advantage. If you are maths like incapable, don't become an accountant, no matter how many people tell you it's a good thing to become an accountant, right? It's just not going to go well for you. So you can go down the list of our personal attributes. And I have attributes where, for example, I think out loud. Is that a strength or a weakness?
Context dependent.
Context dependent, right? put me on a stage, ask me a question, let me wax philosophical, give me a podcast and a microphone, give me one question, and 4 hours later, I'm still talking, advantage, right? Sit me down on a team when I'm having a team meeting and somebody says something and I'm thinking out loud, I'm now dominating the meeting. Maybe I need to learn how to scale that back a little bit.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.